All right, we're rolling live from the wasteland. This is Freedom Phil out here outside the survival pod. And what's the topic today? If you're going to claim something's cultural appropriation on so many little issues, well, why is there a certain group that seems to be culturally appropriating, I don't know, about 50%, 51% of the populace? Wait, what are you talking about? Yeah, this is Freedom Phil. Like, subscribe. Let's get into it. And hey, when it comes down to it, you should be watching videos at higher speeds. That's why the channel is called Turn Up the Video Speed. Well, after I upload this, watch it at 1.75. Hey, like and subscribe. Let's get into it. So I'm watching the undercurrent news, and there's this woman who bought this ticket to go to this barbecue festival, something, lefty type of event. And she gets there and you see all the usual retarded actors, the people that are perpetually offended. And she's one of these people, by the way. But she made the cardinal sin of having the wrong hair type. Yeah, think about how insane the world is, where there's actually an issue with someone having a hair type. And we talk about cultural appropriation. I could kind of hear where people talk about with First Nations. You don't want a bunch of fakers making a bunch of fake native artifacts and stuff, like fake native art. But then again, I think, well, hey, man, it's a free market. And, even if we say no to Americans, China going to do it anyways. But I kind of get that to some degree. But on the other hand, I also look back at the natives and I'd say, well, you seem to be enjoying the modern lifestyle that's been brought to you via science and technology that your people did not culturally build. But that's all a separate conversation. Like, I'm not a big believer in the whole First Nations theory. I'm a believer that there's just people all over the world just kind of moving around and living. Just saying. I don't think anybody's special. But, you see these different groups claiming cultural appropriation. Like some white chick goes to some sort of festival and is wearing a little Indian headdress, and they're like, oh my God, that's wrong. Or let's just say that you happen to like kimonos and that kind of Asian art style, and you get dressed up like that. You cosplay. Could you say cosplay is cultural appropriation? No, it's acceptable because it's cosplay. But if you just happen to like to dress up in a certain style, like for instance, if I took someone who was African and they were dressed up in the Victorian era, well, isn't that cultural appropriation? No, maybe they just like dressing up that way occasionally. Just like with the chick with the kimono. Well, you could even get down to politics of, well, this particular area is from this island, and you're that other type of Asian. There are people that are that fucking myopic in their brain. They're that narrow-minded. I see this situation when it comes to hair. Or, fashion trends. You guys remember that guy? This is years ago. This is when a lot of these people in these universities were going crazy. It was back during BLM. This hippie kid going to school, going to university, he's got dreadies. Well, how many times have you seen, let's be honest, no offense, pot-smoking, dirty hippie kids with dreadies? Shit, I banged a chick back in the day. First, she was shaved head for a long time in solidarity with her mother. Her mother was going through cancer, so solidarity. Her mom even called out, you just like doing the shaved head thing. She's like, yeah. But she grew her hair back, and she had some pretty decent dreads down the road, And this woman goes up to this hippie college student kid, this boy, young man, and she's like, you need to take those dreads out of your hair. That's cultural appropriation. Some black professor. And she's assaulting this dude. Okay? By the way, braided hair is not like that is not like something that didn't happen everywhere else. I mean, go across the Americas. Oh, they never did it. The Vikings, they had dreadies. Fucking the Irish. They see this in history. And they try to make it this one cultural thing, like for instance, Africana. But no, really, surprise, people had dreads and braids all over the world. It wasn't uncommon. Now, we get into the situation where this woman goes to this leftist style thing, this barbecue, and these people lose their minds because she has dreadies. That type of hair, the woolly hair. And by the way, all the usual actors, you see the guy who's clearly trans, And, you're like, that's a dude. I'm like, hey, whatever you want to identify as, that's a dude. And then you see the offended on behalf of other people, white women. Mind you, the woman that they're getting in their face, she was a white woman too. And she's like, well, yeah, but she even tried to use their language. My heritage, I've got Irish heritage. And yes, we've had dreads for thousands of years. And they're like, no, that goes against our rules. Okay, clearly discriminating against this woman. And by the way, it's her fucking head and her fucking hair. Who the hell are you to tell her that? I mean, by that logic, black women shouldn't have straight hair whatsoever. You're appropriating, European/Asian culture. Like, Asians fucking the champions of long straight hair. What's my point? So, if all these different forms of appropriation, these Democrats and losing their minds about cultural appropriation, oh my God. By the way, it's just a new way to segregate people. Like, we all can't just enjoy what we enjoy. You have to have control over other people. Authoritarians. Back in the day, it was a religious right. Same style of smelling shit. Now it's the authoritarian left. The new authoritarians. Like I've always said, would make a great name for a punk band. But how the hell is it you could ever talk about cultural appropriation? And as I said at the very beginning, 51% of the populace has their culture appropriated against their will. What do you mean? Think about it for a second. All these trans people, and by the way, I don't have a problem if you want to be trans. You want to put on a dress, gay, straight, whatever. I don't care. I do think there's some weirdos hijacking your movement, though. I really do. I think there's some weirdos out there that basically put a bad name on the trans people. And there's people out there that are literally just creepsters putting on a dress or just identifying. Like literally in the trans movement of America, all you have to do is identify as trans. That's it. You could literally be a dude. You could look like Carl from Aqua Team Hunger Force and just say, I'm a trans woman. Y'all think I'm kidding, but no. Literally, you could just say, I'm a trans lesbian, masculine representing. And they're like, are you going to get the surgery? No, the goddess gave me my beautiful masculine clitoris. Why would I mutilate what the goddess gave me? It's not a new phenomenon, by the way. So the standards are pretty low on what they consider trans. If you just say you're trans, you're trans. You're whatever, pansexual, 32 flavors of fucking gender you decide today. Or, your furry kin or, other kin or whatever fuck. By the way, there's another group that's been growing in leaps and bounds, as the gay community, by the way, that used to be the belle of the ball, has slowly faded back because you're boring now. Gays, you're boring. You're fucking boring. So you now have equality. You're just as boring as the rest of us. And the same thing with the old school lesbians. Yeah, you're not edgy anymore. Now it's the new edgelords. And that's, between the furries and the authoritarian trans. But I would argue, if you want to talk about cultural appropriation, I think whether you believe the planet is thousands of years old or millions of years old, there have been countless generations of women that have had the culture of being a woman. Different habits, different things. You can take women from all over the world and they can kind of get together and have a good conversation. They can agree to work together. All these different women. Now, some people yes, some people no. But for the most part, women have a culture. 51% of the fucking planet is women. Why? Because men die younger. Why? Because we're sick of being around at a certain point. We're like, just fuck this. Time to go somewhere else. Women live longer. For you to sit there and say that it's cultural appropriation for clothing, cultural, type of art or hair or whatever, down to the way people speak, but you have the nerve to basically be like, well, no, anybody can claim they're anything. If you're a man and you want to be a woman, you just claim it. Is that not cultural appropriation? And look, like I said, I don't care. If you want to be trans, cool, whatever. It's not my business. You want to dress up however you want to dress? Just don't be a fucking freak. There's some of them out there that do such a good job, they look better than a lot of fucking fat hogs at Walmart. See some of these women out there and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ. The trans woman put in more effort than some of the real women. But if you're going to make this claim on the regular of cultural appropriation, then let's just be honest, Democrats, because you're the one really pushing this. The trans movement is cultural appropriation. Because there's no way you could sit there and say there isn't a culture around being a woman, just like there used to be, and there still is, a culture around being a man. There's male culture, there's female culture. So how the hell are you going to say someone can't have a hairstyle or wear a certain type of clothes? Like if you're cosplaying, it's okay. But if you just happen to like this other type of fashion, oh, well, that's cultural appropriation. And by the way, that is neo-segregation. That is exactly what it is. They're trying to keep all these different little groups separated. You know, we're gonna see the Democrats bring back their classic term, separate but equal. Remember, make no mistake. The party of Jim Crow was the Democrats. The party of the Ku Klux Klan was Democrats. The party of, the first anti-gun law and slavery to affect black people was Democrats. They're trying to do separate but equal, but on what you can wear, what you can do. I'm just saying, if you're going to have this whole cultural appropriation nonsense, telling people how to live, what they can wear, what they can do, how they can talk, how they can be in a so-called free country, then you best start talking to the trans community and saying, well, we got to kick you out because what you're doing is definitely a cultural appropriation. You can't argue that basically trying to be a woman, like 51% of the population ain't got a culture. And how do women feel about that? How do women, like for instance, how do women really feel about it? And by the way, ladies, I don't have much sympathy for you because I got to be real about it. You voted this shit in. That's right. You voted a lot of this craziness in. So then down the road, your little girl's going to school and she gets into the ring with a trans athlete. She gets punched in the face and her nose is broken. You voted this shit in. Or you got some creepsters out there. Like I said, there's lots of regular, normal trans people. And I think we need to make a third bathroom or just figure it out, because I do think it's a little ridiculous that you got some dude with 5 o'clock shadow in a little girl's bathroom. I think that's fucking perverted. Some dude in there dropping a shizoli, stinking the fucking place up. I mean, even if he's not a creep, I'm sorry. When you drop that deuce, men don't want to smell that. You shouldn't expose women and children to that shizoli. No, I think women are fucking right to be a little offended that there's some dude with a dangler in the presence of their young children. But remember, ladies, you voted for all this shit. Y'all like to forget that fact. Y'all sit there being all like, well, you see, I believe in this and that. You believe in performative empathy. That's a lot of you, and this includes a lot of conservatives, by the way. I vote for this, but then you never expect it to come home to your own family. I believe in it. You believe in it for someone else in someone else's community. And as long as it affects someone else's family, ain't nobody care. And by the way, you want to talk, you got to be a subscriber. No offense, but you want me to read your comments? At least you got to be someone that's worth reading. And I'll still clown on you occasionally. Just got to be real about that. But yeah, I look at the situation of like what has got to be the greatest form of cultural appropriation I've ever seen. And by the way, it's funny how everybody talks about, our art, our hairstyle, or this or that. Well, hey man, all this Western technology that you benefit from, let's be honest, how much of the world advanced hundreds, if not thousands of years just from people coming to your country? Yeah, I know colonization was kind of a bitch, but it is what it is. I point this out because I think cultural appropriation at its core is fucking ludicrous. I do. I think it's fucking stupid. It's someone assaulting your freedom to choose how to be, And as long as you're not harming anybody else, like, and by the way, harm is not someone else choosing to be offended, because it is a choice a lot of the time. It is. It's literally a choice. You get up in the morning and you decide, I'm going to be, this way or that way. And you see something you don't like. Okay, I kind of understand if someone's breaking windows or causing problems. But if they're just minding their business, you should mind your fucking business. And like I said, I don't got a problem. Someone wants to wear a dress, that's fine. But once you start, be creeping around a bathroom, or here's another one. You get some of these predatory trans people. Lots of good ones out there, but you get some of these people that they get off on trying to get with straight men. Now, how isn't that a form of rape? Well, that's a word we're not supposed to say, is it? How is that not a form of rape? You lie to this person. If lying to a woman about your income is a form of SA, if, portraying yourself as something you're not can be labeled as that. How is it that when a trans person does that type of thing to a straight man, he gets a blowjob, then it turns out that that guy had a chicken, not a taco. And you sit there, they get off on that. Now you got some creepsters out there. I'm just saying, when people say my authentic self. Well, if that's what you believe your authentic self is, if you want to wear, I could care less you want to wear a dress. But if your authentic self can't be honest about what you are, that's not authentic. It's like, all I'm getting at with this is that if you want to have cultural appropriation, apply it all the way along. There should be nobody dressing up like a woman. There should be nobody wearing anybody else's hairstyle. And that includes black people getting their hair straightened. There should be nobody doing all this shit. Be consistent with your beliefs. But I say, hey, if you want to wear a dress, whatever. You want to have your hair straightened, whatever. You want to have dreadies, whatever. You want to wear some other culture's fashion style, whatever. I think we'd all be doing a lot better if we just found out really quickly that yes, we should all be minding our own fucking business. But just next time somebody talks about trans this, trans that, remember, the party that says cultural appropriation has no problem allowing 51% of the world's populace to have their culture appropriated against their will. Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. Y'all take it easy. Anybody subscribed, thank you. Anybody hit that like, I appreciate it. And I'll be back at it, eventually ranting at something again. Peace.